Chosen one, stop whatever you are doing right now, because heaven has been keeping a record, and every single tear you cried in silence has been counted. And what God is about to release into your life in return for that pain is so massive, so sudden, and so undeniable that the people who watch you suffer will not even be able to explain what they are witnessing. Chosen one, there is something you need to understand before another day passes. Something that heaven has been waiting for the right moment to make clear to you. Not because the timing was unclear to God, but because you needed to reach this exact place in your journey to be able to receive what is about to be spoken over your life. You needed to have gone through enough. You needed to have cried enough. You needed to have waited long enough. Because what God is preparing to release into your life cannot be given to someone who has not been shaped by the weight of real suffering. And you, chosen one, have carried a weight that most people around you will never fully understand. Think about the nights you cried alone. Not small tears, not the kind of tears that come and go quickly. These are the tears that came from somewhere so deep inside of you that you did not even know that place existed until the pain reached it. These were the tears that fell when no one was watching. When a room was dark and quiet and the rest of the world was asleep and you were lying there wondering if any of it was ever going to change. Wondering if God was still there. Wondering if the silence meant you had been forgotten. Wondering if the dreams you once carried were gone for good. But here is what heaven needs you to know right now. Every single one of those tears was seen. Not one of them fell without being recorded. Not one of them was wasted. Not one of them disappeared into nothing. There's a verse in the book of Psalms that says God collects your tears in a bottle and records each one in a book. That is not poetry. That is a spiritual reality. Heaven has been keeping a record of every moment you held yourself together in public and then fell apart the moment you were alone. Heaven recorded every night you prayed and heard nothing back. Heaven recorded every time you chose to keep believing when every logical reason to believe was gone. And what you need to understand is that this record is not just a memory. It is not just a log of your pain. It is the foundation of your return. Because in the kingdom of God, tears are not just water. Tears are currency. Tears are seeds. Tears are the raw material that God uses to build something that cannot be shaken, something that cannot be taken, something that the enemy has absolutely no power over. The very thing that broke you in the dark is the very thing that God is going to use to elevate you in the light. You may not have seen it yet. You may still be standing in what feels like the middle of the waiting. You may still be looking around at your circumstances and wondering when the shift is going to happen. But chosen one, hear this clearly. The shift has already been set in motion. What you are feeling right now, that quiet stirring in your spirit, that small but undeniable pull towards something greater, that is not your imagination. That is the beginning of the acceleration. Because here is what God does. He does not bring your reward slowly and casually. He does not trickle it in over years and years so that you barely notice it arriving. When God decides that the season of preparation is complete and the season of recompense has begun, He releases everything at once. Suddenly, without warning, in a way that shocks everyone who thought they knew what your story was going to look like. The same people who watched you cry will watch you rise. The same mouths that whispered doubt over your name will fall silent when they see what God has done. And they will have no explanation for it, because what God is about to do in your life cannot be explained by talent, by effort, by strategy, or by luck. It can only be explained by grace. Think about Joseph for a moment. Here was a young man who was thrown into a pit by his own brothers. People who shared his blood. People who were supposed to protect him. They stripped him of the coat his father gave him, which was not just fabric. It was identity. It was favor. It was the visible sign of what his father believed about his future. And they threw him into a hole in the ground and sat down and ate a meal while he cried out to them. Can you imagine that kind of betrayal? Can you imagine looking up from the pit and seeing the faces of people you loved, people you trusted, people you never would have imagined capable of that kind of cruelty, and watching them turn away? Joseph cried in that pit. He did not yet know what God was doing. He did not yet have the full picture. All he had was the pain of the moment. And then he was pulled out of the pit and sold into slavery. And then he served faithfully in the house of a man named Potiphar, and was falsely accused and thrown into prison. Year after year after year of circumstances that made no sense. Year after year of waiting in places that felt like the end. But heaven was keeping a record. Heaven was counting every tear. Heaven was watching every moment of faithfulness in the dark. And then, when the moment came, it came suddenly. Joseph went from the prison to the palace in a single day. Not gradually, not slowly. In one day, everything changed, because that is how God works when the fullness of time arrives. And chosen one, you are closer to your Joseph moment than you have ever been. The years you spent in your own version of the pit, the relationships that felt like betrayal, the opportunities that disappeared without explanation, the seasons of silence when heaven felt far away. None of it was random and none of it was wasted. Every single piece of it was preparation. Every single tear was being counted. And now, the record that heaven has been keeping is about to become the blueprint for your breakthrough. There is something else you need to hear. The enemy knew this moment was coming. That is why he fought you so hard. That is why the warfare in your life has been so intense, so personal, so relentless. An enemy does not deploy his greatest weapons against someone who poses no threat. He does not exhaust his resources on someone whose destiny is small. The level of resistance you have faced is directly proportional to the level of impact that God has assigned to your life. The enemy attacked you because he saw your future before you did. He knew what you were capable of becoming. He knew what God had placed inside of you. And he tried everything in his power to make you give up before you reached this moment. But you did not give up. You are still here. You kept getting back up. You kept choosing to believe even when believing felt impossible. You kept pressing forward even when every door seemed to be closing. And that perseverance, that refusal to let go of what God placed inside of you, that is not a small thing. That is the mark of someone who has been genuinely chosen. Because the ones who are truly called are the ones who cannot quit. Not because they're immune to pain, but because something inside of them is stronger than the pain. Something divine. Something that was placed there before they were born. And now, chosen one, God is saying something over your life that I need you to receive with your whole spirit. He is saying the record is complete. The season of preparation is finished. The season of recompense has begun. Every tear is about to be answered. Every night of crying is about to produce a morning of something so beautiful that it will make you understand why the pain was necessary. Not because pain is good in itself, but because the depth of the valley determines the height of the mountain you are about to stand on. You could not have been elevated to where God is taking you without having first gone through what you went through. The suffering was not a detour. It was the road. I want you to think about the specific tears that come to mind right now. The ones that still feel fresh even if they happened years ago. The relationship that ended and left you feeling like you would never recover. The loss that changed everything. The moment when someone you trusted completely turned their back on you, and you felt the ground disappear beneath your feet. The dream that seemed to die before it ever had a chance to breathe. The door that closed just when you thought it was finally opening. Every single one of those moments is in the record. Every single one of those tears is in the bottle. And God is about to give you back not just what you lost, but what those losses were preparing you to receive. Because this is the part that most people do not understand about the way God works. He does not just restore what was taken. He upgrades it. He does not just replace the old thing with the same thing. He replaces it with something greater. Something you could not have handled before you went through the preparation. Something that would have overwhelmed you if it had come too early. The delay was not denial. The delay was God making sure you would be able to carry the weight of what He was preparing to give you. There are doors about to open in your life that no human being has the power to close. Not the people who doubted you. Not the people who left. Not the people who said you were too much or not enough or that your dreams were unrealistic. Those voices have no authority over what God has decreed for your life. And the decree that is being spoken over you right now, in this moment, is this. It is time. The waiting is over. The preparation is complete. The reward is on its way. You're going to start noticing shifts in your circumstances that you cannot explain. Opportunities that appear from directions you are not even looking. Connections with people who carry exactly what you need for the next season of your life. Doors that you stopped knocking on years ago, suddenly swinging open. Provision arriving in ways that make no natural sense. Peace filling the spaces inside of you that used to be full of anxiety and fear. A clarity about your purpose that cuts through all the noise and confusion and finally shows you exactly why you were built the way you were built. And the people around you are going to notice. They're going to ask you what changed. They're going to want to know what you did differently. And the answer is going to be simple. You did not quit. You held on long enough for God to finish what He started. You cried your tears and you kept walking. You felt the weight and you kept believing. You went through the fire and you came out on the other side, not destroyed but refined, not weakened but strengthened, not emptied but filled with something that the fire could not touch. Chosen one, God does not forget. That is not who He is. His record is perfect. His timing is perfect. His love for you is perfect. And the reward that is coming your way is not a consolation prize. It is not a small acknowledgement for the pain you endured. It is a full and complete and overwhelming answer to every tear, every prayer, every moment of faithful endurance that heaven recorded in the darkest seasons of your life. It is coming with the speed of someone who has been holding it back for exactly the right moment. And that moment is now. Do not look back at where you came from with shame. Look back at where you came from with the eyes of someone who now understands what it was for. Every hard season was a teacher. Every loss was a deposit into a future you could not yet see. Every tear was a seed planted into soil that God was preparing for a harvest so abundant that it will take your breath away. You are not who the enemy told you that you were. You are not the sum of your worst moments. You're not defined by the seasons where everything fell apart. You're defined by the God who held you together when everything fell apart. You're defined by the calling that was placed on your life before you were born. You're defined by the tears that were counted and the record that was kept and the reward that is now being released. There's a moment that comes in every chosen one's journey where the weight of the waiting finally lifts, where the question of whether God sees you gets answered so loudly and so clearly that you almost cannot breathe, where everything that was promised starts arriving at once, and the pace of it is so fast that you have to remind yourself to stay grounded. That moment is not years away from you. That moment is not even months away. That moment is so close that if you could see in the spirit what heaven is already preparing, you would not be able to sleep tonight out of anticipation rather than anxiety. God has been working in the background of your life in ways you could not perceive. He has been having conversations on your behalf that you were not in the room for. He has been shifting things in the spiritual realm that are about to manifest in the natural. He has been closing doors that would have trapped you and opening doors that are going to liberate you. He has been removing people who would have sabotaged your next season and positioning people who are going to accelerate it. All of this was happening while you were crying. All of this was happening while you were waiting. All of this was happening while you were wondering if anything was ever going to change. It was all changing. You just could not see it yet. And now, chosen one, the veil is being lifted. The invisible is becoming visible. The things God was doing behind the scenes are about to step out onto the stage of your life. And when they do, you will understand everything. You will understand the delays. You will understand the detours. You will understand the seasons that felt like punishment but were actually protection. You will understand why certain things had to end before other things could begin. You will understand why the road looked the way it looked. And you'll be grateful, not for the pain itself, but for what the pain produced. Not for the tears themselves, but for what the tears were preparing you to receive. Heaven has been keeping a record, chosen one. Every single tear, every single prayer, every single night of faithful endurance in the dark. And the God who kept that record is a God who repays. He is a God who restores. He is a God who does not let a single drop of sincere suffering go unanswered. He is a God who takes the seeds of pain and grows them into harvests of abundance that go beyond anything you asked for or imagined. Your reward is coming. It is already in motion. It is already closer than it has ever been. And when it arrives, it will arrive the way God always works, suddenly, completely, and in a way that leaves no doubt about who was behind it. Heaven has spoken. Receive it. Chosen one, take a breath right now. Let what was just spoken settle into the deepest part of your spirit. You did not arrive here by accident. Every step that led you to this moment was ordered. Every tear that was counted is about to be answered. The season you're stepping into is not a continuation of the pain. It is a reward for surviving it. God does not bring you through the fire just to leave you standing in the ashes. He brings you through the fire to show you that what He placed inside of you cannot be burned. You're still here. You're still standing. And what comes next is going to make everything that came before it make complete and perfect sense. If this message reached something deep inside of you, if you felt your spirit respond to these words, if something in your chest said yes while you were listening, then do not let this moment pass without acknowledging it. Type the words, "I am ready" in the comments right now as a declaration to heaven that you receive what God is releasing into your life. Share this message with someone who is still in the middle of their waiting season, someone who needs to be reminded that their tears have been counted and their reward is on the way. Subscribe and turn on notifications because heaven is not finished speaking, and the next message may be the one that changes the entire direction of your life. You are not alone in this. You never were.